So everybody's done this at some point. You're scrolling social media, you're searching online, and suddenly you see an item that you never knew you needed. Before you know it, you've clicked add to cart and checkout. Or maybe you just hit one click to buy. A few days later, the package comes and you open it, you're super excited. But then maybe you're looking at the purchase that day or a couple of days later, a couple of weeks later, and you start to think to yourself, why did I buy this? I don't really need it. If this sounds familiar to you, don't worry, you are not alone. Welcome to Your Brain on Money, a show that explores the fascinating intersection of psychology and personal finance. I'm Hannah, I'm a certified financial planner, and today I'm going to be diving into the science behind those impulse purchases that leave us confused and often financially regretful. And more importantly, I'll tell you some strategies to help break the cycle. Okay, so what exactly is going on in our brains when we make an impulse purchase? Neuroscientists have found that shopping activates reward pathways in our brains, flooding our system with dopamine, which is the feel-good neurotransmitter. This is the same chemical reaction that's triggered by things like food, sex, and drugs. And just like with those other stimuli, the dopamine hit from shopping is very short-lived, very temporary. That's why retail therapy might make us feel better in the moment, but the glow quickly fades, and it often leaves us feeling worse than before, especially when we are spending more than we can afford. And the real kicker to all this is our brains are hardwired to seek out this dopamine rush again and again. It's like a feedback loop that keeps us coming back for more, even when our bank accounts, our closets, our apartments are begging us to stop buying things. And in the age of online shopping and one-click purchases, it is easier than ever to get that quick hit of dopamine. Keep in mind that these companies, Amazon, any type of retailer really, they're spending millions and millions of dollars or maybe even billions to make the shopping experience as frictionless as possible. They want to make it as easy as possible to buy, removing all of those guardrails that normally your brain will put up to slow you down when making a decision so you can spend as much money as quickly as possible. A lot of digital payment methods have removed a lot of the pain points, like I was saying before, that used to give us pause. Back in the day when we were handling physical cash, it felt a lot more tangible and, kind of in a way slowed us down and made us think about, what we were actually handing over when we purchased something. Even when we had a credit card, you would have to get up to go find your credit card. And that would kind of even those couple minutes of doing that would give you a little bit of buffer to decide, is this really something I want? Now you'll see things like being able to store your credit card payment, like right in your computer, being able to pay with just your fingerprint or just a tap. That is not just the ease of purchase that's fueling our impulse buying. The entire shopping experience is designed to keep us in a state of peak dopamine stimulation. If you think about those personalized product recommendations on social media, on Amazon, lots of different retailers that kind of seem to read your mind, or maybe you're seeing an endless scroll of new items that are perfectly tailored to your tastes, that creates a dopamine buffet that never ends and is literally engineered through these platforms to get you to spend more money. And let's not forget about the rush of anticipation that comes with online shopping. The thrill of the hunt, searching for something, the excitement of scoring a deal or even buying, and the eagerness of waiting for that package to arrive. It's all part of the dopamine roller coaster. In fact, many studies have shown that the anticipation of a reward triggers even more of a dopamine release than the reward itself. So when we combine the ease of one-click buying with the constant stimulation of personalized anticipation building online shopping experiences, it's kind of no wonder that our impulse control really goes out the window. But the good news is, just like we can train our brains to seek out that shopping high, we can also train them to find pleasure in other healthier activities. It's all about being mindful about what's happening in our heads and making a conscious choice to redirect our reward-seeking behaviors. And I'll talk more about this in a little bit. Okay, so we know what's happening in our brains when we impulse buy, but what is actually triggering these urges in the first place? A lot of times it's our emotional state. Feeling stressed, sad, or even bored can send us searching for something to kind of fill the void. And a lot of times that can be a shopping high or impulse purchases. Retail therapy is a very real phenomenon. One study found that 62% of shoppers had purchased something in order to cheer themselves up, and 30% had purchased something as a form of celebration. But why do we turn to shopping to manage our moods in the first place? For many of us, it's actually a learned coping mechanism for emotional dysregulation. Maybe you grew up watching your parents shop when they were stressed. We've also seen countless TV shows and movies that depict shopping as the ultimate pick-me-up. So over time, we've come to associate purchasing with a emotional fix, even though it's a very quick one. There's also, I think, an element of control at play. When we're feeling very overwhelmed or powerless in other areas of our lives, shopping can really provide a sense of agency. We might not be able to control our workload, our relationships, or even the state of the world, but we can control what we put in our cart. It's a very small but significant way to assert our autonomy. But it's not just internal factors at play. Retailers are masters at setting up environmental cues to trigger impulse buys. And I'm not even talking about in-person shopping, I'm also talking about online as well. Those strategically placed items by the checkout counter, limited time only sales. Even the way that the store is laid out or the website is laid out is designed to draw you deeper in. And I cannot emphasize enough how much money these corporations are spending to engineer and, play upon your psychological urges to get you to spend more. It's all designed to tap into your impulse control center. And like I was saying before, online, we're bombarded with even more cues to spend than in person. You'll see targeted ads, like I said, that seem to read your mind. You'll see influencers that are pushing products. And especially on social media, it's very difficult sometimes to be able to tell what is an ad and what has financial incentive and what is a genuine recommendation from someone else. And let's also not forget about the power of FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. There's a ton of scarcity marketing tactics, especially in the retail and the spending space. You'll see online, like only 3 left in stock, or 10 people are looking at this item, or, 24-hour flash sale. This is all almost like catnip for our impulse buying brains. And these triggers are everywhere, and they're becoming increasingly sophisticated. Retailers are starting to use data and AI to predict and prompt our purchasing impulses with super specific accuracy. On top of this, a lot of them have access to our personal data so they can see our spending trends over time and send us hyper personalized targeted ads. They almost know what we're likely to buy before we do, and they're often not shy about using that information to fuel our impulse shopping. But the thing is, as consumers, we're not powerless. We can learn to recognize and resist these triggers. And for me, it really starts with awareness, simply noticing when we're being prompted to buy and asking yourselves, do I really need this? Does this align with my values and goals? Just a brief momentary pause can be enough to break the spell on an impulse purchase. But while the dopamine hit might feel good in the moment, the aftermath of an impulse purchase is often anything but. There's the obvious financial costs, of course. American households have an average of $6,000 in credit card debt, and impulse buying is a major contributor to that. One study found that the average American spends $450 per month on impulse purchases. That is $5,400 per year. So to put that in perspective, if you were to invest $450 per month over 30 years with a 7% average annual return, you would end up with over $600,000. That's the power of compound interest, but also the true opportunity cost of impulse spending. But it's not just our wallets that are taking a hit for all this. There's also a psychological toll to all this unplanned spending. You'll get post-purchase regret. Maybe you'll feel guilt, shame. It can really do a number on our self-worth and overall happiness. In fact, there was a really interesting study from the Journal of Consumer Research that found that impulse buyers often experience a significant drop in self-esteem immediately after a purchase. It's almost like the momentary high of the buy is replaced like a crushing low of shame and self-doubt, almost like a hangover. Over time, this cycle can seriously erode our sense of self-control and self-efficacy. And the kicker of all this is that impulse buying doesn't just impact us in the moment. It has a compounding effect on our long-term financial goals. As I was saying before in that investing scenario, every dollar spent on an unnecessary purchase is a dollar not saved for retirement, a down payment, or an emergency fund. Over time, these small impulse buys can really add up to be a major roadblock on our path to financial freedom. And I'm not saying that every single dollar needs to be meticulously tracked and, you can't spend any money on fun. I think it's really important to just bring awareness into your spending and where you are impulse spending, and just understanding how important it is to just take notice and potentially cut back, and like how much your financial life can drastically improve when you bring that level of awareness to your spending. Perhaps the biggest cause of habitual impulse shopping is to our overall life satisfaction. There's a growing body of research that suggests that materialistic pursuits don't lead to lasting happiness. And I think we see that a lot in these trends of people spending more on experiences and, the trends on social media over like anti-consumerism. Another study found that while the purchase of material goods provides a quick boost of joy, it fades quickly. Experiences, on the other hand, provide more enduring happiness. So those shoes that you bought on impulse might give you a temporary mood lift, but that feeling pales in comparison to the memories and personal growth gained from, say, an impulsively booked weekend getaway. While we're constantly chasing the next dopamine hit from shopping, I think it's important to think about investing in the things that feed our souls. And that's why I'm saying it's impulse shopping as its face is not completely bad, but I think it's important to be deliberate about what we are impulsively spending on. When we get caught in the cycle of impulse spending, we're not just draining our bank account, we are draining our life energy. We are trading our precious resources of time, money, and attention for a fleeting sense of satisfaction. But in my mind, it doesn't have to be this way. By bringing more awareness, like I was saying before, to our spending habits and aligning our purchases with our deepest values, we can really start to break free from the grip of impulse buying. We can start to invest in things that truly enrich our lives, like experiences, relationships, personal growth, and financial security. Okay, so we understand the problem, but what can we do about it? How can we break free from the cycle of impulse spending and start making more mindful, intentional purchases? One simple strategy that I love is implementing a 24-hour rule for non-essential purchases. If you see something you want, that's great. Put in your cart, but don't check out. Give yourself a full day to mull it over. Oftentimes, you'll find that urge passes and you can move on without buying something. This really works because it gives your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making, a chance to catch up with your limbic system, which is the part that's driving those impulse urges. By giving some time and space between the impulse and the action, you allow your higher brain to weigh in. Another trick is to create a want list, where you write down all the things you're tempted to buy impulsively. I love this. But the key to this is that you're not allowed to purchase anything on the list for at least 30 days. This creates a built-in waiting period and gives you the chance to reassess if you really want or need the item. Something I'll typically do is have this list and at the end of the month, look at it. And if I have money left over in my budget, I'll kind of do an assessment based on that. It's a really great trick to make sure you're not spending and going over your budget throughout the month. Like I said before, the strategy is really effective because it acknowledges the desire without immediately acting on it. It's kind of like saying to your brain, I hear you, I'm not ignoring you, but we're going to give this a little time before we decide. And more often than not, this urge will pass. And if it doesn't, you can feel more confident that it's a worthwhile purchase. But what about those emotional triggers that send us running for the mall or the add the cart button? This is where self-awareness is huge. Just start paying attention to what emotional states or situations tend to precede your impulse buys. Do you find yourself stress shopping after a tough day at work? Do you find yourself boredom browsing on your lunch break? Or maybe after you got in a fight with someone, you're revenge buying. For me specifically, when I am hungry, I tend to be pretty irritable and I tend to spend more. That's why I try very hard not to grocery shop when I'm hungry. Once you've identified your triggers, you can start to develop healthier coping mechanisms. So instead of turning to retail therapy, maybe you could call a friend or take a walk, journal, or practice a few minutes of mindfulness. Building a toolkit of alternative stress busters can really help short-circuit the impulse buying cycle. One particularly effective strategy is to cultivate a gratitude practice. Studies have shown that regularly reflecting on the things we're thankful for can really boost our mood, increase our resilience to stress, and improve our overall life satisfaction. And when we're coming from a place of abundance and appreciation, we're less likely to seek fulfillment through material purchases. It's also extremely critical to get a handle on your budget. When you have a clear picture of your income, expenses, and savings goals, it's easier to see impulse purchases for what they are, which are deviations from your life path. Creating a budget that includes room for necessary purchases, but also discretionary spending, and the most important part is to stick with it. One way to do this, like I was talking about earlier in this video, is to give yourself a monthly fun money allowance. This is a predetermined amount that you can spend on whatever you like, guilt-free. And so when those impulse buying urges strike, you can dip into your fun money without derailing your whole financial health and feeling kind of really down and negative on yourself. Once the fun money is gone for the month, however, that's it. No more impulse buys until the next month. I think that's a really great way of setting boundaries with yourself while still allowing yourself to engage in purchasing things that are going to make you feel good. I think like the number one thing when you're making any sort of purchase that's non-essential is just asking yourself, like, why am I buying this? What need am I trying to fill? How will I feel about this purchase tomorrow, next week, or even next year? By bringing more awareness to the underlying motivations behind our spending, we can really start to make choices that are more in line with our authentic selves. So, to recap, impulse buying is driven by a complex mix of brain chemistry, emotional triggers, and environmental cues. It can take a major toll on our finances, our self-worth, and our overall life satisfaction. But becoming aware of these factors and implementing some simple strategies, we can really start to break the cycle. Things to remember include the 24-hour rule, the 30-day want list, and the importance of identifying your emotional triggers. Building a budget, practicing gratitude, and developing a toolkit of really healthy coping mechanisms are also essential. But I think the most important thing is just be gentle with yourself. Changing habits takes time, and there will likely be setbacks along the way. But bringing mindfulness to your purchasing is just the best step in the right direction. I really hope these insights have given you some food for thought and some practical tools to start shifting your relationship with impulse buying. If you found this helpful, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I got plenty more in mind and lots of money tips coming your way.